come with me. I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Donna Tuschoff. I am from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm happy to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I started card making about 35 years ago. I did that for about 10, 12 years, and then I took a long break, having kids, and then came back with actually this summit in February of 2023 is when I got back into card making. And there was a lot that had changed, let me tell you. So it was kind of interesting learning again. My session that I have running today is about embossing that stands out. These are the two cards, in case you haven't seen, that I go over in making. Um, it talks about using embossing to highlight, like in the flowers here, there's some gold embossing. And then I talk about using a die cut to make the stencil and using that to do both of these backgrounds. So that's what you have to look forward if you haven't seen the video yet. That's what I have in the video. I know there was some questions about the worksheet to download. If you are having trouble with that, you might want to email support. That is all done centralized with support, and they should be able to help you out. I know in the mornings, since this is very early in the morning, there might just be a little something going on with that download. So just go ahead and email support, and hopefully they can help you out on getting that link to work. And with that, if you have any questions, certainly put them in the chat and they'll pop up for us. I like embossing. Heat embossing is one of my favorite things to do. And I like to try to do it in different ways. In this one, I used it to highlight in my flowers. And, like I said, in the background, using it. I like to layer embossing where you heat emboss once and then heat emboss the next layer over on top of it. That's kind of fun to do. And I just think it adds a lot of great accents to your cards. I heat embossed when I started card making. It was not as fancy then, when you think 35 years ago, but it has been around that long. Um, and I didn't do it as much. I just did it for outlines of things and then being able to color inside of it. So, that was my very basic embossing. Since card making has changed so much, there's more stenciling, there's more. Um, the layered stamping, I've been able to use embossing in a lot more ways now. So that's why I thought this would be a great session to do for the Card Maker Success Summit. If there's, as I said, if there's any questions, go ahead and pop those in. One of the things that I really like doing is making stencils out of like cover plates, which is what this card did. I used a cover plate that we cut out this shape, and then I used that. I did that on really heavy cardstock, and then that gave me a stencil to use for my heat embossing. Some of the things that you got to keep in mind with heat embossing is make sure that you have a heat gun. I have just a regular crafting heat gun. There's all kinds. Mine is just a one temperature heat gun, but it does get very hot. I always warm up my heat gun ahead of time. And then you need your embossing ink or pigment ink is best so that it stays wet longer. And then you need your embossing powder. And these days, there are so many embossing powders out there. I mean, a lot of different companies, a lot of different colors. My go-to colors are clear, white, silver, gold, and sometimes black. I don't use black very much, but those are my go-to colors. When you have clear embossing powder, it is great in that if you stamp color underneath, start with stamping a color, then clear on top is going to give you the color that you want. But I do also like some of the colored embossing powders. I think they make great backgrounds when you're using colored embossing powders. So that's something that you can look into. There's ones that have glitter in it. There's ones that have multiple colors in the embossing powder, so it'll give it a different effect, melting the different colors together. And then, there's ones that have, I have one that has kind of like silver sparkles in it, and that's really great. Looks like the worksheet has been fixed, so anybody that can try that again. And if you're still having problems, you might want to try refreshing. If that doesn't work, then you can certainly reach out to support. So looks like you have the worksheet available now that you can download. So as I was saying, I have one embossing powder that has kind of this silver, I don't know if you want to call it, it's almost like flecks. It's not really glitter, it's like flecks. And then when it melts, it has a little bit better, bigger pieces of silver in it. And it's a black embossing powder. And I think that's really cool that it looks really awesome that way. I have another one that's called Milky Way, which I really like. I used it on a moon, some moon and sky projects that I did, and I thought it was really cool because it has kind of gray and white inside the black embossing powder, and it melted down, making it look really kind of like the sky and having the different colors in the sky. So that was pretty cool. Question: what drove you to get back into card making? Well, like I said, I took a break mostly because kids came along, but I was at a scrapbook crop. I had kind of gotten back into scrapbooking because I had a lot of pictures that needed to be put back into scrapbooks. And I had a friend there that was making cards. She was doing cards that day. And what intrigued me was all the new things in card making. She was, using a Misty. I'd never seen a stamping platform because I only used acrylic or actually wood block stamps mostly when I was stamping acrylic. And the photopolymer stamps really were just coming out when I stopped. She was doing that. She was doing some um, foiling. She was doing all kinds of interactive cards, and it just really piqued my interest again. So I started looking into some of the things that she was doing. I had a lot of the supplies, but it was mostly wood block stamps. And I got really intrigued by all the stuff that was out there, the layering stamps that you do. And then I had never done stenciling really to the degree that stenciling is done today. And all of that just really kind of intrigued me to get back. And I stumbled across the Card Maker Success Summit right when I was looking into all this, and I signed up for that. And I was like, I went to that and I was amazed at all the things, coloring with alcohol markers. I had never tried that or even heard of doing that. So there was so much that was out there that I thought was great. And I had the time again since my kids were leaving the house, graduating from high school and everything. And it gave me the time to go back and try all the stuff. So that is why I got back into it. And let me tell you, the Card Maker Success Summit really helped. What are the differences in embossing powders and which are your favorite brands? I'm not sure what you mean by differences. Most embossing powders melt pretty much the same. There are the differences in some have, like a sparkle or glitter in it, or the different colors mixed together. There are some I've seen that are glow in the dark. There are some extra thick ones, so they'll be thicker when they melt, or like a marshmallow puff. Um, I like a lot of different brands. I use a lot of Brutus Monroe embossing powders, and that's part of my giveaway. Um, they are really really good. I've used Wow embossing powders and Hero Arts. I've had success with those. I have one color that I love is from Pink and Maine, so I kind of base it on what they have and what I use. But most of my basic ones are Brutus Monroe embossing powders, and that's what I used in making these cards. But I would say there's most embossing powders that I have seen are will do the job. So let's see. I still seem to have problem with stray flecks. I use an anti-static tool, but there are still flecks. Any tips or tricks? Um, it depends on what kind of anti-static tool you're using. I would say first of all, make sure you're covering the whole area. If I'm doing a whole card, I'll cover the whole card. You make sure I'm covering a big area outside of where I'm going to emboss at. I like the finer powder anti-static tools. That seems to work the best for me. For my way of doing it, I still will get a stray fleck or two once in a while, and then I just use like a brush to try to brush those away. But most of the time, I have real good success if I just make sure I cover it. If you put too much powder down, especially if it's a thicker or a heavier grain powder, sometimes you get too much powder on there. And then when you go to put your embossing powder, the powder goes over um, your stamped image. So, you kind of have to have that fine line to make sure that it's good and covered. Like if I'm embossing on black, I can see that it's changed the color and then I wipe it away once I'm done. So I would say just try to make sure that it's well covered. I think one of the other things is make sure that none of the ink, if you've like, let me give you an example. This card, I did a lot of the stamping, and the final layer I did is embossing on these flowers. Um, I let this ink dry, or I heat set this ink before I came in and put the next layer in the anti-static powder. I didn't want the powder to go into the ink of the rest of the flowers. So make sure that everything around it is dry as well. And heat setting will do that. Hopefully that helps, and I wish you luck on that. Do you have any tutorials for using the colored embossing powder other than sentiments? Um, I don't know that I have. I'm trying to think. I have, I think, one video on my YouTube channel that uses, I think it's one that uses the Milky Way. I can't remember for sure. It was a year or two ago. Um, but like I said, I think I like using the colored embossing powder on backgrounds. And then I would also use like a colored embossing powder as highlights. Like if I had maybe like a orange, dark orange red, I could have done that for that last layer. I think that's really a neat way of doing it. So I like to use it mostly in backgrounds and then maybe as a highlight color in something that's layering is most of the time what I will do with the colored ones. And maybe I'll try to do a project coming up and put it on my YouTube channel about that. So check it out. I've got some projects coming up that I need to finish to post up there. So I'll think about using some colored embossing powder for that. I think the colored embossing powder can add a lot of accents, that's for sure. Okay, my YouTube channel, it's Donna T Crafting, is what you can look up. It's all together. And I post mostly the card making videos. They are from just using different products. I do work with a couple of different companies that I do some videos for. Right now, I post at least every other week. I was not posting a lot, so up until I guess this year, I decided I'm going to post at least every other week. I will try to get to the point where I'm posting weekly. I'm just kind of trying to get into a pattern. Like I said, most of them are either card making or like card making. Like I have one up there now that is like a carrot box, so, it's using dyes to make something like that, but most of them are cards. using different techniques. I like to usually try to put a technique into most of my videos. So they're very similar to the videos from the Card Maker Success Summit. So check it out. Would love to have you subscribe if you like the content and want to come back and watch some of the videos as I post them. Have you found that embossing powder has a shelf life for quality embossing? That question gets asked a lot. My experience, as I mentioned, I live in St. Louis, so we get a lot of humidity in the summer. I think that has a lot to do with it and how you store your embossing powders. I have embossing powders from back when I started card making, so 30 years old, 35 years old, and I can still use those and they're fine, but they've been closed up in a airtight container. I keep them in the basement where it's a little cooler because we do get humidity in the summer. So I have not had a problem. I usually, if it's an older embossing powder, I will test it before I use it on a project that I've been working on for a couple hours. I wouldn't try it like that. I would test it on scrap paper to make sure it's fine. I have heard people say that if they live in more humid climates, that they've had some issues with it not working as much. So I think there could be a shelf life depending on where you are and how you store it. But most embossing powders that I um, have continued to work for, like I said, 30 something years. So the ones that I don't use so often, I've had that long and still have plenty of it because it seems like you don't use much embossing powder when we're doing it, so it lasts a while. That was a good question. I appreciate that asking that. Glitter all the time. Thank you. Yes. I just got this a little while back, and I do like the glittering all the things. That's why I added sparkle into one of my cards. And I like to use the embossing powder with the sparkle more than actual glitter. I like glitter paper. I have learned a few techniques lately that help me with glitter so I don't get it everywhere. That's the thing that drives me nuts is if glitter is all over the house. But I have started learning more techniques that eliminate that. But I like things that sparkle, that's for sure. Purple's a good color for it too. I have a person that is old and it still works, and I live in Florida. Oh, good. Good. So even with the humidity there, so probably you're storing it in something that's not letting the humidity get there. I love embossing. My powders are at least 30 years old as well. Yeah. Yeah, they last forever and depending on how much of you use of it. I use gold a lot, so I have a big container of gold and I am starting to see it go down. So my gold seems to go down a lot faster than well, I guess gold and clear are the two that I use the most. Um, so I'm glad that they're still working after that long. For the card where you use silver, why did you cover half at a time? Oh, I just did half at a time because I think it's easier holding it to just do half, so I didn't have my fingers in it. So, I didn't have a lot of edge to hold on to it. So I did half of it, did the embossing. Once that cooled a little bit, then you can do the other half, and you didn't have to worry about sticking your fingers. There wasn't a lot of places to hold it, and I didn't want any gaps with using a tool to hold it. So that's why I did half at half. It's just a lot easier to do that. I also think, you don't have if you get interrupted, you don't have part of your embossing ink drying and then the powder not sticking to it. So that was it, basically holding it since it's a full coverage thing. It works better that way. That was a good question too. Thank you. I think adding layers is also a cool thing to do. Adding, 2 or 3 layers of embossing powder certainly smooths it out and it makes it look thicker. This kind of reminds me of like a chain link fence type thing with this silver embossing powder and it being kind of thicker on here. It kind of reminded me of a chain link fix. So I could think of a lot of different ways you could use this type of background for masculine cards. And that's usually, something that I'm always looking on at working on is getting more masculine cards in my stock. So I thought that would be cool to use for all kinds of things. Like my friend has a car stamp that I think would look great on that too. Do you need a different glue to glue on top of an embossed areas? I have never had to use a different glue. I used my normal liquid glue on this that I use on everything. And for this card, I just use foam tape. Um, Hopefully you're not having issues, but yeah, no, I just use my normal liquid glue. I think if you use like a tape runner, I think it would work. I think there could be a little bit of issue maybe if it's sticking just because this is a little bit slicker, but it should work. I just normally use my liquid glue on it. So, and these were all just glued down, just using the liquid glue. Like I said, this one was used with foam tape. So, and foam tape is really strong. It'll certainly work. If you do run into problems, maybe look at using like a score tape. That would work as well because that's a real strong stick. How do you store cards for future use? Any filing system? Does each card has it in envelope? For filing my cards, typically when I make a card, I make the card base. So I mean the card panel. I don't put it on a base usually. And then I put that card panel in. I have a plastic container and it's divided by birthdays, hello, thinking of you, sympathy, just different categories, holidays. And then when I'm ready to use it, I will put it on a card base and I can decide if I want a top fold or a side fold at that point. Or sometimes I'll just sit down and put them all on card bases at one time. But I don't typically put them on card bases right away. I just have a stack of envelopes. I grab an envelope once I've picked out a card. I don't typically put the envelope with the cards. But I use mostly white envelopes. Every once in a while, I'll use a colored envelope. If I use a colored or specialty envelope, then I would put it with the card. But like I said, most of the time I just use white envelopes and I just store my card panels and put them on bases later. Thank you, everybody, for coming in to my session today. As a reminder, I am Donna T. Crafting all together on Instagram and YouTube. I do post cards on Instagram quite often. And like I said, I'm starting to do more videos. So thanks. Enjoy the summit. And I will wish you a happy day and happy crafting. Bye.